I don't believe in this notion that this people can be deradicalized.
I want UNRWA defunded, decommissioned. Who's going to start the deradicalization of the population from from birth?
There are a lot of people who talk about a Marshall Plan and that we need to do that which was done after World War II with the Palestinian Arabs, and we need to rebuild the Gaza Strip, and we need to create apartment buildings and opportunities and so on. There's one key difference that is often overlooked. At the end of World War II, the Germans signed a note of unconditional surrender. Hamas has not signed any such thing. In fact, Hamas has repeatedly voiced its determination to show defiance and its determination to carry out future October 7ths as and when it's able to do so. In my opinion, it cannot be that the ultimate outcome of what was launched against us on October 7th is that every single Gazan gets a brand new apartment in a high-rise building that is invested into by some sort of international investment fund. To me, that makes no sense at all. In addition to that, with regard to the viability of this, the Israel Defense Forces cannot withdraw, whether this is after the decommissioning of weapons held by Hamas or prior to the decommissioning of weapons held by Hamas, because we know that there is a relentless aspect to the jihadist ideology that powers these people over there inside Gaza. Now, there are some people who have criticized me because I do differentiate between Hamas and I differentiate between Gazan civilians, but I don't absolve the civilians of Gaza because I've been given no reason to absolve them. And I'll give you an example of why I don't trust any notion that they are ever going to be deradicalized. On October 7th, there were 3 waves of attack that came through the fence from the Gaza Strip. The first wave of attack was the Nukhba forces, essentially the elite, if you like, of Hamas. The second wave were the regulars of Hamas. The third wave was Gazan civilians who went into the kibbutzim and the communities there along the enclave that abutted the Gaza Strip and promptly looted anything and everything that they could find from those homes. These were Gazan civilians. There is not one story, not one tale, not one testimony of any Gazan civilian going into any of these Israeli communities, seeing the carnage that had taken place and applying CPR or first aid or calling an ambulance or anything of the sort. That same Gazan population applauded and cheered, and people can go back and look at the videos, when Israel's people, our elderly, our infirm, our soldiers, our dead, were dragged through the streets of Gaza on October the 7th, and that same population applauded in droves each and every time that there was a macabre release ceremony of our hostages when they were handed back to us after having languished in the tunnels of Gaza for many, many, many days. I don't believe in this notion that this people can be deradicalized.
If they were to move, in my opinion, Benjamin, into Egypt, not in a displaced persons camp, which is temporary, then they would again be viewed as refugees. And the cycle, to me, continues, but I understand we are different positions. On some of the other topics, the World War II example of basically, you're right, unilateral surrender, but the scale that I think people miscomprehend, even in Japan, a strongly radicalized society, it was a functioning society. And then the unilateral surrender with the leadership saying, we have being left in place. So many variations. People won't face the reality of the radicalization of this population. You mentioned it about October 7th, and I agree with you. More civilians crossed the border than actual so-called militant combatants, members of Hamas. That aspect has to be reckoned with, and the work that has to be done to do it, and why building not necessarily getting rid of this welfare society, right? So building self-dependence, which is, when we talk about, we covered most of the podcast about the security concerns. Of course, that until it's resolved, I don't care if it's 1 point, it's 99% your point. There's a famous quote about this. It is Israel's number one concern. It is even the peace board's number one concern. But if you really want to get to stability to where security is alleviated, then you have to cover governance. You have to cover services. And again, I don't I want UNRWA defunded, decommissioned, failed in every aspect, to include even providing basic services and hiring Hamas to do that. You have to get into that education and labor, and who's going to do it? Who's going to start the de-radicalization of the population from the, from birth, the Sesame Street, all of this? You have all of these people, and I give credit to the nations that are even doing the International Stabilization Force, but all the NGOs vetted in the vetting process. This is the work. So, but lastly, this, I understand the Israeli, and I've seen reporting about, this won't work. It's insanity to try it. You and I have had conversations about those that said Hamas would never give the hostages back. So in this aspect of, it's just not, they won't give their weapons up. They'll never give up power. I'm not saying hold my beer, as an American would say, but I see forward progress. And the fact that for about 5 months, we didn't have any forward progress, and it was pretty much status quo. Like, okay, like, we understand the scale of this task. I'm saying there is historical principles that can be applied, and there are successes in a very unique context. But those that say just not possible, I think that they've already been proven wrong, as you and I said. And there is an aspect, going back to, it requires immense amount of will to keep at not just the security concerns, that's number one, decommissioning, but the education, fixing even the services, get them off of being a welfare society. And this is the aspect of that was perpetuated not by just those in the countries, but in the international community, of that's not going to build stability or peace in any way. You got to teach them basic, and I know Israel left agriculture. There was all the vibrant aspects of that there. It was radicalized under this warped ideology that you're not going to fix. And this is the one place that I agree with you on 90% of the Saudi Arabia thing is, who's going to do the de-radicalization and do it quickly? There is some work done by Saudi Arabia to fix their own radicalized problem. That the principle, not cut and paste, the principles are there. So I don't mind them being a part of that personally.